Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
I've been painting ever since I can remember. My mom would just put paintbrushes in my hand and paint, and that was exciting for me, so it was a good teamship even back then with her and I. And then was more of a traditional landscape painter, a little more representational, wasn't the most abstract back then, and just learning and trying to get dimensions and perspectives right, and just doing it all. Went to museum school in Boston for art school and graduated in 1996. And I learned a lot about that through the professors there. And then the final year there, I was introduced to resin. And I had seen someone putting found objects in a piece. One of the landscape painters brought me to see this, and I did have a vision right there when I saw it. And they were more catching the resin in a mold and putting more natural pieces of, I think it was bark and sticks. And I just had this vision to take my paintings and start to separate them. So where I would paint maybe the sky and the mountains, and if it was a landscape, but now I would sort of think of what came first, and I'd put the sky in the background, I would pour some resin, and I'd start to maybe add some mountains sort of in the middle ground, pour some more resin, start putting some trees in up front, and finally, after a couple more pours, maybe some really close-up pieces, and what you'd get was a three-dimensional painting. And I did those for a while. I was still exploring my representational side, and then more recently, I said, let's separate these layers by more and get some more depth and explore some colors in my own head. So the pieces you'll see more now are colors, a little more abstract. You never know where I'm going though. I might revisit those mountainscapes. Maybe the rooster will sit up front and there'll be a big mountain back there and a sky. And so my wife is very creative and very good with color. And oftentimes she's the one who's putting the colors together. And eventually I'll take them again and work them with tools, power tools, just like you would blocks of wood. So I'll cut them out, and a lot of times she jumpstarts a piece with me, or on her own. But when we do work together, a lot more happens, in my opinion. We're a good team. Liquid paint is one of my really big ways to apply paint to a piece. I love the way it dries, and I don't force it. It just kind of dries and renders itself. I will get into regular acrylics or oils with a paintbrush and mix it all up and get them right and smooth it out until it's beautiful, but that's a lot of work, and I've found a lot of times with the right mix, you can get something to dry and render a lot more exciting than I could ever paint it. So I'm still creating it, but definitely different for me with the liquid paint. Actually, a lot of what you're seeing is recycled. This piece from here over was an old painting, and from here over again, another painting. The feet and the head were kind of created to bring the piece together, but what happens is these pieces go into a mold and they get shaped and finalized and they're recycled. So what we got here is just what I just said. It's a fully recycled piece. These are scraps from years ago. We've been pouring resin a good part of 20 years. And a lot of pieces aren't that exciting, and we'll just keep them around for colors. We've got bins and bins and bins of scraps. And this will be more the front, and what you'll see when it's finalized is hopefully a little more coordinated, color coordinated deer head. Sometimes when I'm making a piece, you overwork them, you overdo stuff, you overthink. But a lot of times on the pieces that are below the actual piece I'm working on, I'm not touching them as much, and what happens sometimes is a really subtle, simpler kind of a mood piece. This one's just orange. It's got a little red through it because something must have leaked off something else, but the artist's hand is somewhat out of it. And I think people appreciate that when they're not quite sure how that was made, or, you know, a lot of times us artists, we make things that are very predictable. A lot of brush strokes. You know, you can see the hand that made it almost in the piece, and you can understand it, and that's not as exciting sometimes as a piece that's really subtle, and the viewer says, how was this created? There's a hardener and a resin. When mixed together, the hardener and the resin will create, in about 6 hours, this glass-like acrylic surface. So I'll mix it up in a bucket, put on a respirator, maybe open a window. It's not very fumy, but I recommend that. Stir it up with some stir sticks as you would paint, and pour it into a mold. You pour it over a final piece. The particular rooster I have, and I keep showing you this, but this has been final poured. He was suspended up a little bit so he wouldn't stick to or bond to the piece below him or whatever was under him. And I take a rubber glove and I actually rub the resin around the outside of him, bringing this back to a shine, because this was actually more of a matte finish. It looks like raw wood, really. You can't even see through it when you've sanded it and shaped it. The final coat of resin is what brings it back to crystal clear. Any scratches, scuffs, they all come back to crystal clear with that final pour, so that's like the icing on the cake. Resin bonds with itself, so any scratches, scuffs, cuts, pour over them and they're gone. You can certainly buff it too, like you would an automobile, and compound out littler things. So a lot of ways to make sure you've got a nice shiny medium forever. And generally that's not an issue because it's difficult to scratch. I liken this medium to working with wood. You have a sawdusty type feel. There's dust basically that's removed, and all the same sandpapers, same chisels and hammers, drills, everything you'd think of for wood will also work with resin. So yeah, I'll sand these pieces, shape them, round them, basically with all the tools you'd use for wood. There's really no difference. I would just work it, I'd chisel away at the fins, I'd sand a little bit here and there, maybe grab my Dremel, get into the fins a little bit, just like you would a nice block of wood that you wanted to shape. And then it's all rough. It basically has a finish that you can't even see design through, almost the way you saw them with the dust on it. There's nothing you can see through there except a faint color or two. It's really 90% or so hidden from the image because it's sanded. It's just the way it is. Bring it upstairs to where I pour. I'll actually set it up and pour a final coat of nice resin over the top, and it will bring it back to this shine. So that is a fun process because usually by then I'm tired, I've worked on the piece, I'm dusty, and I get to finally see what was back under there that I haven't seen in days or however long it does take. Light has a huge effect with resin. There's morning light, there's night light. Right now you're seeing a late daylight, and it's different from a front light. It's coming in through the side at the moment, so you're getting a lot of different looks. You're getting shadows on the left side instead of the right because the light's coming in from the right. At night, an overhead light's going to be totally different as well. A lot of times we'll illuminate a piece from within, and that's a whole nother look. It's going to float more. There's no shadows. Front lighting is going to give you the most dramatic shadow behind some of the layers. You can actually illuminate these a variety of ways. If you actually had an underlight, maybe, or a lot of times a house is going to have just a natural overhead light. And if it's the right way, it will actually travel through the piece. You can get it to illuminate. You just have to set it up right. So many ways to light it. Sometimes you're in a confined space such as this one. It's a basement bathroom, and you stumble in, it's nighttime, and you want to wash your hands, and the lights are off, and what do you have here but an illuminating vanity? Just enough to not startle the person washing their hands. They can certainly see themselves in the mirror or see their hands. And functional, fashionable, very fun function to have illuminating vanity. Illuminating bar top, illuminating counter in your kitchen, something. So it's a shiny, durable, sometimes functional medium, and to me it just is uplifting and exciting.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.